Pokemon Gold and Silver originally released in 1999 for the Game Boy Color as a follow-up to the original Pokemon Red and Green games. During this time, Pokemon was still incredibly popular, and you'd even see licensed Pokemon merchandise everywhere, like this strategy guide for Pokemon Gold and Silver made by Brady Games. The front cover of this guide shows Pokemon Silver version and the back shows Gold. Interesting how Gold isn't on the front, and although my copy is pretty beat up, the introduction pages show off the table of contents, a general explanation of how Pokemon works and the basics, and even how stat moves work, which some guides don't even mention at all. It then goes on to say how you can have 3 separate teams in your game, one for battling in-game, one for catching Pokemon, and another for multiplayer battles with other trainers. The introduction part is pretty short, and the actual walkthrough starts on page 16, when most other guides take at least 30 pages just to explain the basics. Now if you're new here, one thing we like to do around here is take a look at these strategy guides and play along with them to see how good they are at guiding around a new player, or just to see how weird or funny they are when it comes to things they say in the game, and what they tell you to do. This is a new guide we're looking at, as we have looked at an older Pokemon Gold and Silver guide, although I shouldn't say this one's new either, as they're still both over 24 years old. If you think that's cool, consider leaving a like and subscribing, and now let's load up a brand new save of Pokemon Silver and beat it how Nintendo intended. Your house. Your journey begins here at your house in New Barktown. Your first task is to visit Professor Elm in the building just to the left of your house and talk to him about the new Pokemon. First things first though, head downstairs and talk to your mom. She'll provide you with your Pokegear, in combination wristwatch, telephone, and more. After receiving our Apple Watch, we can head out to Professor Elm's lab and pick our starter Pokemon. The guide gives us a brief description for each starter option, making Totodile and Cyndaquil seem like the superior choice, since for Chikorita it mentions how it's a grass-type Pokemon and has a lot of weaknesses, and how if you're going to use Chikorita you'll be switching out a lot. I just picked Totodile and named it Subscribe, then begin our journey towards Mr. Pokemon's house to deliver something that Professor Elm wants us to give him. We have to go through a couple of routes and go to Cherry Grove City to reach Mr. Pokemon's house first, and along the way the guide details which Pokemon we can catch and even tells us which Pokemon are new to Generation 2 and which Pokemon are just old Pokemon from Red and Blue. One of the first new wild Pokemon we encounter is Sentret, however the guide tells us not to evolve it into Furret right away, as Furret doesn't gain another level up move until level 80, although I don't think keeping a Sentret just a Sentret to level 80 is a good idea either. For Cherry Grove City we get a quick tour of the town, learn how Pokemon Centers and Pokemon Marts work, and now we can come back here later once we get Surf to see a bit more. At this point I also noticed it didn't outline Route 46 at all, which is just north of the first route you can access in this game, and you can catch another Pokemon there. You can also access the top part of the route much later, but I typically like to go to the southern part of the route as early as we can to get another Pokemon. Next for Route 30, the guide says to head north to Mr. Pokemon's house and collect items along the way. It details another new Pokemon in Hoothoot, which only appears at night, spelt N-I-T-E, then it shows Rattata, which the guide is much less enthusiastic about, followed by the 2 version exclusives in Spinarak and Lediba. I always forgot that Lediba was a silver version exclusive, since I always associated Lediba as the quintessential Gen 2 bug type, at least more so than Spinarak. We eventually reach Mr. Pokemon's house and give him the mystery egg that Elm wanted us to give him, and then get a call from Elm urging us to return to his lab as somebody stole one of his prized Pokemon. On our way back we meet our rival, and the guide says, "How odd. The same unnamed young man that was snooping around Professor Elm's lab in New Barktown faces you with a Pokemon from that same lab. If you've been leveling up a bit, you shouldn't have any trouble with this fight. Hit him with your strongest attack, and if you have a berry equipped to your Pokemon along with potions in your pack, he'll go down without much of a fight." When we meet the professor and this police officer, they ask us to name the red-haired boy we just battled since he stole one of Elm's Pokemon. I just name him Rival because he's our rival. Then we receive Pokeballs and can start our journey for real now as we can finally catch Pokemon. Between here and Violet City, the guide shows us all of the trainers we can fight and tells us to collect some Pokemon, so I catch a Sentret and then catch a Bellsprout. When we reach Violet City, one of the first things the guide mentions here is how we can get an Onix if we trade away our Bellsprout for it, and since Bellsprout is pretty common, we make the trade. The guide then wants us to do Falconer's Gym next to get our first gym badge before we take on the Sprite Tower and beat the Elder to get the Flash HM, which makes sense because Falconer's levels are a bit lower than the Sprout Tower's levels. However, I typically like to do the Sprout Tower first, help us get our Pokemon leveled up a bit more, although I guess it doesn't really matter too much in Gold and Silver. The guide mentions how Geodude or Onix will be good here, so we use our Onix to resist the flying type attacks. And it also says how if our starter is well trained and a good level, it'll be a decent fighter for this gym. After defeating Falconer, getting our first gym badge, the guide tells us how we can pick up the Togepi egg, But if we don't have room for it in our party, not to worry, because your team won't be hurt badly without Togepi. It then details Togepi and says how evolving it into Togetic might not be worth it because of the added weaknesses that come with the flying typing, but I think the stat buff from a Togepi to a Togetic is worth taking on the flying weaknesses. Next, the guide wants us to take on the Bellsprout Tower, so I catch a Hoot, collect some items, and go on in. I always thought that this moving center column in the tower was a bit trippy, but the guide doesn't mention much about the tower outside of the Flash HM we can get for beating the Elder. On the next page, the guide briefly mentions the ruins of Alf and how it's optional and lists it in the optional areas in the back of the book, so we continue along to Route 32. There's a ton of trainers to fight here and a couple of new Pokemon like Mareep, which I end up catching and named Floof. The main reason why I got Mareep here was because the guide did say to make it a point to catch one, and if the guide says something like that, then I just have to do it. When we reach the Pokemon Center on Route 32, the guide mentions the 1 million Pokédollar Slowpoke tail we can get, or can't get because it's impossible to get that much money, and how we can go fishing by getting the Goldenrod from this guy. This trainer looks more like a bug catcher than a fisherman to me, and I don't know what he's doing with an Goldenrod, as our next task is to go through the Union Cave. The guide shows which Pokemon we can catch in the Union Cave, like Ekans, which it mistakenly says is only weak to Psychic, although it's also weak to Ground, and it's also listed as being 6 foot 7 inches tall. I never knew Ekans was that tall, or that long, I guess. But the cave connects us up to Route 33. There really isn't much for us to do here, and it leads us to Azalea Town. Here we meet Kurt, who, much like your mother, has a fixation on balls, then rushes to the Slowpoke well to stop Team Rocket from cutting off Slowpoke tails and selling them off for profit. Here we can also catch Slowpokes, which the guide outlines and mistakenly says how Slowbro evolves into Slowking when traded with a King's Rock, which isn't really true as it's really a split evolution, and Slowbro doesn't evolve. It details a bit about each Team Rocket grunt here and which Pokemon they have. Once we defeat them, they all run off, allowing us to take on the second gym against Bugsy and his Bug-type Pokemon. The guide then makes another mistake referring to Bugsy as her, and how we should use Flying-type attacks so our Hoot works well against him, as we defeat him in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail for the Hive Badge. While exiting the town, we meet our rival, who has a level 12 Ghastly and a stolen starter Pokemon at the second evolution, level 16. Once defeating him, we go to the Ilex Forest and go far-fetched hunting to get the Cut HM, and learn that we can catch an Oddish here, but only at night. It's another Grass-type Pokemon, which the guide hates, by the way, saying how your only danger when using Oddish is the nasty type weaknesses to just about everything under the sun that comes with the Grass typing. We also get the Headbutt HM we can use to bong trees, then exit to Route 34 just before Goldenrod City. Here the guide outlines the daycare center and how it's worth it, so I deposit Mareep here to get a few levels up, and then proceed north and into Goldenrod City. On the map, it looks like it was a Wendy's here, but nope, that's just Whitney's gym, which is equally as terrifying. Our egg then hatches here into Togepi, and I put it right in the daycare with Mareep to get some more levels, although I never end up getting the Togepi back out of the daycare center. Then we go to the bike shop for a bike, see Bill's mom, and check out the underground where Totodile evolves into Croconaw. Next, it details the department store and says how once you're rolling in the cash, we should spend it on the medicine items to improve our Pokemon stats. On the 5th floor, it shows a trade we can do to trade a Drowsy for a Machop, so I went back and caught a Drowsy and traded it for this Machop. The next page then shows Whitney's gym, which Machop will be ideal for. Whitney is armed entirely with normal Pokemon. A Clefairy and a Miltank aren't going to put up much of a fight as long as you have a decently leveled up team. If you need them, this is a good place to use one of the attack or defense enhancing items. These items are useful if you know you'll be facing a string of enemies that will be damaged heavily by the use of a single item, and in this case, you do. Whitney isn't exactly the most mature trainer. After you beat her, she'll refuse to give you the badge. Talk to her nearby friend, then talk to Whitney again, and she'll give you your rewards. I was a bit surprised to see the guide say how she shouldn't put up much of a fight when Whitney is one of the most infamous trainers in any Pokemon game, but we did have a female Machop which couldn't be attracted by her Pokemon, which did make it pretty easy as it's also a fighting type Pokemon to hit a normal type Pokemon super effective. Following the gym, we get the Squirt Bottle, visit the Radio Tower, and then the Game Corner. The guide shows Dratini in the Game Corner, one of the prize Pokemon here, and it becomes amazingly strong when it evolves, so I spend some time at the slot machines grinding up to 2100 coins to pick one up. That's about all we need to do in Goldenrod City for now, so we head up north, get this Spearow named Kenya from the guard, and on Route 35 it says to search in the grass for a while. You never know what you'll run into. I don't really know what this was alluding to since it tells me what Pokemon I can find here anyway, and I didn't find anything special when I was in the grass. What we can do that is special though is go to the national park and do the bug catching contest since it's Tuesday. Well, it's not Tuesday when I'm writing this part of the video, and it's not Tuesday when this video goes up, but it was when I was playing this part of the game, and it might be Tuesday when you're watching for all I know. I don't know. Here we do some bug catching in the contest, and the guide lists out what types are good against bugs, like fighting types, but I got poisoned while doing the bug catching contest and only caught this stupid little Caterpie and lost the contest. As we sulk in our defeat, we read about Sunkern, another new Pokemon we can get here in Gold and Silver, which learns a powerful Drain attack at level 46 if you don't evolve it. Good luck keeping a Sunkern unevolved for that long. I'm just gonna go to Route 36 and pour water on the strange looking tree. It's a bizarre rock tree that I of course catch and name Tree, and continue due north to Ecruteak City. Here we learn about the brand new evolutions, Espeon and Umbreon, the coolest two evolutions by the way, and head into the dojo to fight the Kimono Girls with all of their evolutions. It outlines all the trainers here and says they're Kimono Girls except for Mickey, who doesn't have the Kimono Girl tag next to her name in the guide for some reason, who must be an imposter or something. For doing this, we get the Surf HM as a reward, but the guide doesn't say how we can go back to Bill's house now in Goldenrod City to get our own Eevee, so we just don't get to use a cool evolution for ourselves in this playthrough. It would have been nice for Morty's Ghost-type gym, and the guide recommends the move Bite, which Croconaw has and is perfect for. It also says how pure Ghost types oppose you in here, but none of Morty's Pokemon are pure Ghost type, and the only pure Ghost type that exists in the game right now is Mischievous, which is a brand new Generation 2 Pokemon that Morty just doesn't have on his team. We just hammer away at Morty with our bites and collect our 4th gym badge. Following the gym, we enter the Burn Tower and have a very quick rival fight. Our Mareep evolves into Flaffy, and we head west to Route 38, which has the best route theme in all of Pokemon, and see some more new Pokemon like Miltank, yet another normal type Pokemon. This one learns a host of useful moves, including Recover and Rollout, if you like cows. It also shows Farfetch, which is extremely average at best, leading us into Olivine City where our Hoothoot evolves to Noctowl. In Olivine City, we do some fishing and fighting, my two favorite things, by getting a better fishing rod and the Strength HM. Next, we can head up to the Lighthouse, and the guide suggests Electric-type Pokemon for this Lighthouse, so we use our Flaffy here, which works really well. Although the best move we have for it right now is just Thunder Punch, which is special, but Thunderbolt, along with Flamethrower and Ice Beam, just don't exist as TMs in this game, which I always found to be pretty strange. When we reach the top, we see Jasmine and Ampharos, and are told to surf over to Mahogany Town to get medicine for the sick Ampharos. Inside, we stop by the pharmacy for the secret potion, and then meet a photographer that requires us to use the Game Boy printer accessory. I never had one of these when I played through Gold and Silver as a kid, and there's quite a few trainers in this game who ask you to use it, and I always wondered what this was about. And I even remember trying to hook up my Game Boy to an actual printer, which of course didn't work. And then the next 4 pages of my guide were just ripped out, so I had to find what they were online, and of course some of the missing pages include the next 2 gym battles. While we're still in Cianwood Town, we can fight Chuck for the 5th gym badge against his fighting type Pokemon, but we get completely stomped by the gym trainer, so I level up a bit and try again. I know the level cap is an issue around this point of the game in Gold and Silver, and mentioning it is like beating a dead horse, but I feel like if I didn't mention it, somebody else would have mentioned it in the comments down below. And to be honest, I don't really think the level gap situation is nearly as bad as people say. People act like it makes Gold and Silver an unplayable game, when in reality it's just a minor annoyance at the middle half of the game. While leveling up our team, we have a few more evolutions, and finally fight Chuck again and defeat him, who only has 2 Pokemon by the way, and get the Fly HM. Now we can fly back to Olivine City to deliver the medicine to the sick Ampharos and fight Jasmine. For Jasmine, the guide suggests fighting in ground types of course, as well as Geodude. That's the 2nd or 3rd time the guide suggested Geodude, but it never told me where to catch it or never even outlined it in the guide. It also suggests status attacks, although we can't poison her steel-type Pokemon and we can't paralyze her Steelix, so those really aren't that great either. Either way, Machoke and Feraligatr are great for this gym, giving us our 6th gym badge. For Route 42, it says that we can catch a Goldeen here, but that's better suited for the Fishbowl, so I skip it and enter Mahogany Town. When we enter the town, we learn about the Rage Candy Bar. According to the sign near this town's entrance, this is the home of the ninja, apparently celebrating their stealth with a poster announcing their presence. The guide again suggests we explore the grass because we never know what might show up, and of course nothing crazy shows up again, so we go up north to the Lake of Rage and fight the red Gyarados, which the guide also makes no mention of being red or this Gyarados being shiny at all. It didn't make a big deal about the red Gyarados whatsoever, so I just knock it out, then meet Lance, who tells us to meet him in the sketchy Pokemart in town, which is really a Team Rocket hideout. Here we have to clear out a bunch of Team Rocket grunts, and the guide made no mention of how we can turn off the cameras that trigger a lot of grunts to see you and battle you if you just interact with this computer, so we had to fight a ton of grunts without turning that off, leading us all the way to the Rocket Executive, which we also defeat pretty easily. With Team Rocket out of the way, for now at least, we can focus on taking on Pryce's Ice-type gym. The guide doesn't say much about the fight other than how we shouldn't have any problems with it, and how Magneton can handle this team pretty easily. But it also makes no mention of where we could have got a Magneton or Magnemite either. Maybe Magnemite was one of the Pokemon it wanted us to randomly find in the grass when it told us that we never know what we might find, but how was I supposed to know that? When we leave the gym, we get a call saying we have to stop Team Rocket in Goldenrod City, so we rush over there and fight more grunts. We eventually find the imposter, who was pretty sus and I saw him vent, which the guide again suggests we use a Geodude for, but at this point in the game, Geodude should evolve into at least a Graveler, so I don't really understand. I do remember when we did the last Gold and Silver Nintendo Intended video, I did use a Geodude and a Graveler, which was amazing for this game, but I don't understand why the guide keeps saying how Geodude is good in the actual fights, but made no mention previously to catch one or even where to find one. It did go out of its way to tell us to catch a Mareep, which I still am using on the team as of right now, but then again, it didn't tell us to use Mareep in any specific battle, so I don't really understand. We do have another rival fight here as well though. We clear out the Team Rocket executives and save the Radio Tower president who is being held hostage. Now I can go back to Mahogany Town, head east into Route 44. Here it says how if you like straight grass, Tangela is one of the better ones of this type, and it shows Lickitung saying, trying hard for the weirdness crown, Lickitung is a straight normal type that learns all normal techniques. Its stats are very unremarkable other than good HP, but hey, if you like different, Lickitung is that, which reminds me I should probably call her. This leads us to the ice path, and the guide outlines how to get through each puzzle and which items to pick up. There's no trainers here to fight, but it still takes me a little while to get through, leading us into Blackthorn City. Here we have the move deleter and an awful trade that we can get a Rhyhorn if we trade our Dratini, then Clair's gym. For the gym battle, it says, coming at you with a full pack of Dragonair. Clair is pretty tough, but if you come in with a roster of tougher Pokemon, you should be fine. After you defeat her, she'll tell you that you still need to prepare to face the Pokemon League, and that you should go to the Dragon's Den behind the gym to retrieve a Dragon Fang for her. She won't give you the badge until you do, so you don't have much of a choice. The only thing it really told us for this fight was that Clair was tough and we should just be tougher, which is sound advice, and it works for our 8th gym badge, which we then go to the Dragon Den to pick up, and with all 8 Johto badges in our badge case, we make our way towards the Victory Road to fight the Elite Four. The guide details how to get to the Victory Road and all the routes leading up to it, leading to a rival fight that the guide just says he isn't going to be strong enough for us to defeat us, and he shouldn't be too much of a problem. I'm a little surprised at how many battles this guide just completely dismisses, but for now at least we can head into the Pokemon League. We stock up on items since we can't heal at a Pokemon Center in between each fight, and our first battle is against Will. Psychic is represented here on every Pokemon, so any dark attacks you bring along will inflict heavy damage. However, given the rarity of dark attacks, you might not have that option, so you can always go for the alternative types. Xatu will fall easily to Electric, Executor to Fire, Slowbro to Electric, and Jinx to Fire. Second up is Koga, and the guide says, the comical amount of poison here means any Psychic you've brought will inflict serious harm. If Fortress is giving you some trouble, burn it down with fire attacks. Third up is Bruno. This one can be trickier than you think, thanks to a few odd attacks on some of Bruno's Pokemon, but a single Ghost will be immune to the bulk of its attacks, and you can bring along some water to deal with Onix as well as a flyer to back up against the fighters. Then just for the champion we have Karen. The most difficult of the 4, Karen uses a good mix of strong Pokemon, but you can still take them out nicely with a mix of types. Just don't use any Psychic types against Umbreon or Houndoom and you'll be okay. Fighting or bug attacks will inflict extra damage against Umbreon, Houndoom, and Murkrow. You can deal with Vileplume with Fire and Gengar with Ground or Psychic. Again, some of those types don't exactly line up how the guide says they will, as Houndoom and Murkrow are just neutral to Bug. And all that leaves now is the champion Lance, which our Ampharos matches up pretty well against since he has a Gyarados and an Aerodactyl. Then we also have a Dragonair of our own that hits his dragons as well. Overall, it was a pretty simple fight since our team matched up so well against Lance. But we aren't done yet since we still have to go through the Kanto region and fight the Ultimate Trainer Red at the very end, where the credits will roll for a second and final time. The section on Kanto and Red is very short, only spanning about 8 pages, while the main Johto section was about 120 pages. When we reach Kanto, or the land of Red and Blue, we arrive in Vermilion City and have to fight Lieutenant Surge and his Electric-type Pokemon. The guide recommends we use ground types here, but we don't have any on the team, and there aren't any wild Pokemon in the surrounding area that are ground type, and even if there were, they're all really low level, so we just hammer away with what we have for our first Kanto gym badge. Next in Kanto is Sabrina, which the guide says nearly nothing for, and then after defeating her we make our way to Cerulean City to fight Misty. First we need to go to the power plant, but we learn that Team Rocket sold an important machine part at the power plant, so we have to go find it and return it. It turns out that it was in the water in the Cerulean City gym, and I don't know how anybody would figure that out without having a strategy guide of their own to find it. Looking back, I have no idea how I figured this out as a kid. And then after returning to the power plant, we head north to interrupt Misty's date so we can then fight her in the gym for the Cascade badge. It again says nothing for the fight against Misty either, so we go all the way over to Celadon City to fight Erica, which the guide says nothing for, again also says nothing for Celadon City as a whole even. So once we defeat her, we head over to Fuchsia City and fight Janine. This time the guide actually suggested something for the fight in ground or steel type moves, giving us another Kanto badge already. This version of Kanto is very short and can be beaten in only about 2 hours or so, even without rushing. Now we can go over to Lavender Town and visit the new radio tower to then tune our radio so we can then go to the Pokeflute station to wake up the Snorlax near Vermilion City, allowing us to get through it and into Pewter City to fight Brock. The guide has nothing on Brock again, but for Alligator makes it pretty easy, and then we go to the Seafoam Islands and find Blue, who returns to his gym in Viridian City, then fight Blaine in the nearby Seafoam Islands for the 7th Kanto gym badge. Once defeating him, we head over to Viridian City and fight Blue, and yeah, the guide said pretty much nothing for Blaine or Blue, just leaving the Silver Cave and Red in our way to beat this game for real. When we reach the top of Mount Silver, we meet Red, and the guide says how the first reward for defeating him is satisfaction. It also says, notice any resemblance between Red's Pokemon choices and those of a certain popular cartoon character. Thought so. Which isn't exactly true since Ash's team isn't that similar to Red's team in Gold and Silver, and of course we're facing Red and not Ash at this point of the game. I know it's a common misconception that Ash and Red are the same person, but they're not. When we defeat Red, the credits roll again, meaning we beat Pokemon Gold and Silver how Nintendo intended, again. This guide overall was fine, but felt a bit short and had less information than the other Gold and Silver guides we looked at previously. It had a few small mistakes and brushed over a lot of things and felt rather quick, but it was still fun to look at. If you enjoyed as well, consider leaving a like and subscribing as it helps a ton, and consider going the extra mile by being a YouTube channel member. With all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching, have a great rest of your day, I'll see you all next time, and bye bye.